The floorboards creaked under his expensive Italian shoes as Daniel Mitchell stepped into the old farmhouse for the first time. Dust particles danced in the pale light filtering through broken windows. The air smelled of decay and forgotten years. But it wasn't the crumbling wallpaper or the rotting beams that made his heart stop. It was the small, terrified face staring at him from behind an overturned table. Two wide eyes, gray like storm clouds, watched him with the kind of fear that only comes from a child who has learned not to trust adults. And beside her, a thin dog with matted fur let out a low, protective growl. Daniel raised his hand slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. Hey, it's okay," he said softly. But the girl pressed herself tighter against the wall, her small arms wrapped around the dog's neck. She couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. Her clothes were dirty and torn at the elbows. Her hair, which might have once been blonde, was now tangled and unwashed, and in her eyes Daniel saw something that would haunt him for days to come. A complete absence of hope. What was a child doing hiding in this abandoned farmhouse in the middle of nowhere? Where were her parents? And why did looking at her feel like staring into a mirror of his own forgotten past? The answers to these questions would change Daniel Mitchell's life forever. Because the secrets hidden in this farmhouse were about to reveal a truth he never expected. A truth about loss, about redemption, and about the strange ways the universe sometimes gives us exactly what we need, even when we don't know we need it. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel Mitchell sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of Mitchell Enterprises in New York City. The Manhattan skyline spread before him like a kingdom of glass and steel. At 43 years old, he had everything a man could want. A billion-dollar real estate development company, a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, cars, investments, properties around the world. His face had graced the covers of business magazines more times than he could count. But tonight, as he stared at the glittering city below, Daniel felt nothing but emptiness. His assistant, Patricia, knocked twice before entering. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had worked for him for over 15 years. She knew him better than anyone. "You're still here," she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel didn't turn from the window. "I'm always here." Patricia walked closer and placed a folder on his desk. "The board meeting went well today. The investors are happy with the quarterly numbers." "They should be. We made them a fortune." There was a long pause. Patricia had known Daniel long enough to recognize when something was wrong. "Daniel, when was the last time you took a vacation? A real one, not just flying to Dubai for a business conference." He finally turned to face her. His eyes were tired, shadowed by years of sleepless nights and endless work. Vacations are for people who have something to come back to. Patricia sighed. She remembered when Daniel was different, before the accident, before he lost everything that truly mattered. You can't keep running forever, you know. Eventually, the past catches up with all of us. That night, after Patricia left, Daniel found himself doing something he rarely allowed himself to do. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk, the one he always kept locked, and pulled out a worn photograph. In it, a younger version of himself smiled broadly, his arm wrapped around a beautiful woman with auburn hair. They were standing in front of an old farmhouse, the paint peeling, but the love in their eyes unmistakable. Sarah, his wife of 5 years, the love of his life. The woman who had died in a car accident 7 years ago, leaving him alone in a world that suddenly felt too large, too cold, too meaningless. Daniel traced her face with his finger, remembering the day the photo was taken. It was their honeymoon. They had driven through upstate New York, dreaming about the future, about the children they would have, about the life they would build together. "I sold my soul to this company," Daniel whispered to the photograph, "and I still can't fill the hole you left behind." The next morning, something changed. Daniel called his real estate team and gave them an unusual assignment. "Find me a farmhouse," he said. "Old, abandoned. Something with history, something far away from the city." His team was confused. Daniel Mitchell dealt in skyscrapers and luxury condos, not run-down rural properties, but they knew better than to question their boss. 2 weeks later, they found it, an old farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania, about 4 hours from New York. The property had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Margaret Hayes, had died without any living relatives. The house had been tied up in legal complications ever since, slowly decaying while lawyers argued over estate paperwork. It was perfect. Daniel bought it immediately, paid cash, no questions asked. He didn't even visit the property first. Something about the photographs called to him, the wraparound porch, the old oak tree in the yard, the weathered red barn in the distance. It reminded him of Sarah's dream, of the life they never got to live. Maybe, he thought, by restoring this house, he could restore a piece of himself. The drive from New York was long, but peaceful. Daniel turned off his phone somewhere around the Pennsylvania border, ignoring the dozens of emails and messages that were certainly piling up. For the first time in years, he felt something close to anticipation. The countryside rolled past his window in waves of green and gold. Autumn was approaching, and the trees were just beginning to show hints of orange and red. Small towns with white church steeples and family-owned diners dotted the landscape. It was a world away from Manhattan, quieter, slower, almost frozen in time. When Daniel finally pulled up the long dirt driveway to the farmhouse, the sun was beginning to set. The house looked even more decrepit in person than in the photographs. The white paint had turned gray with age and neglect. Several windows were broken. The porch sagged dangerously on one side. But Daniel saw past all of that. He saw potential. He saw history. He saw a chance to build something real with his own 2 hands. He got out of his car and walked slowly toward the front door. The evening was quiet, just the sound of crickets and a distant owl preparing for its nightly hunt. The wooden steps groaned under his weight as he climbed onto the porch. The front door was hanging open, swaying slightly in the breeze. Daniel pushed it wider and stepped inside. That's when he saw her. The girl couldn't have been older than 9. She was crouched behind an overturned table in what used to be the living room, her arms wrapped protectively around a skinny dog with patches of missing fur. Both of them were trembling. For a long moment, nobody moved. "Please," the girl finally whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Please don't make us leave. We don't have anywhere else to go." Daniel's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. He approached slowly, carefully, keeping his movements gentle and predictable. The dog continued to growl, but it was more fear than threat, a desperate attempt to protect the small human beside it. "I'm not going to hurt you," Daniel said softly. He lowered himself to one knee, making himself smaller, less intimidating. "My name is Daniel. What's yours?" The girl studied him with those storm-gray eyes, calculating, assessing. She had learned to read adults quickly, to determine within seconds whether they were friend or enemy. Something in Daniel's face must have passed her test, because after a long pause she answered, "Lily? That's a beautiful name." Daniel gestured toward the dog. "And who's this?" "His name is Bear." The girl's arms tightened around the animal. "He's my best friend. He protects me." Daniel nodded solemnly. "He looks like a very good protector." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Lily, can you tell me why you're here? Where are your parents?" The girl's face hardened. It was a look that didn't belong on a child so young, a look of grief and betrayal and survival. "Gone," she said simply. "Everyone's gone." The story came out slowly, in fragments and whispers, over the next hour. Daniel sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, while Lily remained behind her makeshift barricade, Bear watching vigilantly beside her. Lily's mother had died 2 years ago from an illness. Her father, overwhelmed by grief and unable to care for a child alone, had started drinking heavily. He lost his job, then their apartment. For a while they lived in their car, moving from town to town. Then, 6 months ago, her father dropped her off at a gas station convenience store. He told her he was going inside to buy food. He told her to wait in the car. He never came back. Daniel felt a cold fury building in his chest. What kind of man abandons his own child? Lily had waited for 3 days. When she finally accepted that her father wasn't coming back, she walked into the woods with nothing but the clothes on her back and a stray dog she had befriended behind the gas station. She survived on stolen food, discarded items from dumpsters, and the kindness of occasional strangers who didn't ask too many questions. Eventually, she found this farmhouse. It was empty, hidden, safe. She had been living here for nearly 4 months, surviving on garden vegetables that still grew wild behind the house and water from an old well pump that still worked. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Daniel asked gently. "They could have helped you find a safe place to stay." Lily's eyes darkened. "I went to the police once, back in Ohio. They put me in a foster home." She hugged Bear tighter. "Bad things happened there. The man, he wasn't nice, and they tried to take Bear away from me. They said I couldn't keep him." Her chin lifted with defiant determination. "I'd rather live out here alone than let anyone take Bear away from me again." Daniel understood then. This wasn't just a child and her pet. Bear was family. Bear was the only consistent, loving presence Lily had left in the world. Separating them would destroy whatever remained of her trust in humanity. "Lily," Daniel said slowly, "I bought this farmhouse. It's mine now. But that doesn't mean you have to leave." The girl's eyes widened with surprise and suspicion. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if you stayed? What if I fixed up this place, made it livable again, and you stayed here with Bear?" "Why would you do that?" Lily's voice was sharp with distrust. "You don't even know me. Grown-ups always want something." It was a fair question, and Daniel didn't have a simple answer. How could he explain the hole in his heart that had been empty for 7 years? How could he describe the moment he saw her face and felt something shift in his chest, like a locked door finally clicking open? "Because," he said finally, "a long time ago someone helped me when I had nowhere else to go. I think it's my turn to do the same for someone else." Lily studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, she emerged from behind the table. Bear followed, staying close to her side. "You can stay," she said, as if she were the one granting permission, "but only if Bear can stay too." Daniel felt the first genuine smile in years spread across his face. Deal. The next few weeks were unlike anything Daniel had experienced before. He postponed his return to New York indefinitely, much to the confusion of his board and the frustration of his business partners. Patricia covered for him as best she could, handling the day-to-day operations while her boss rebuilt an old farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania, and rebuilt himself in the process. The work was hard, physical, and deeply satisfying. Daniel hired a small crew of local contractors to handle the major structural repairs, but he insisted on doing much of the work himself. He learned to patch drywall, to refinish hardwood floors, to replace broken windows. His hands, which had grown soft from years of signing contracts and typing emails, became calloused and strong again. Through it all, Lily watched. At first she kept her distance. She would sit on the porch with Bear, observing Daniel's every move with those calculating gray eyes. She was waiting for him to reveal his true intentions, waiting for the kindness to turn cruel, as it had so many times before in her young life. But days turned into weeks, and Daniel never raised his voice. He never made demands. He never tried to touch her without permission or force her into uncomfortable situations. He simply worked, ate, slept, and slowly earned her trust, one small interaction at a time. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Daniel was working in the kitchen, trying to install a new sink, when a pipe burst and sprayed him directly in the face. He stumbled backward, sputtering and soaked, and fell directly into a bucket of paint. From the doorway, he heard something he had never heard before. Lily was laughing. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but unmistakably genuine. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed, and for one beautiful moment, she looked like a normal little girl. Daniel sat in the paint puddle, water dripping down his face, and started laughing too. "I guess I'm not very good at this, am I?" Lily approached hesitantly, Bear at her heels. "You're supposed to turn off the water first," she said, a hint of a smile still playing on her lips. "Everyone knows that." "Well, clearly not everyone." Daniel wiped paint from his eyebrow. "Maybe you could help me? Be my assistant?" Lily considered this seriously. Then she nodded. "Okay, but only because you need a lot of help." From that day forward they worked together. Lily handed him tools, held flashlights in dark corners, and offered surprisingly practical advice. She knew more about survival and self-sufficiency than most adults Daniel had ever met. She taught him which berries in the woods were safe to eat. She showed him how to start a fire without matches. She explained which sounds in the night meant danger and which were just nature, going about its business. In return, Daniel taught her things she had missed in her years of running and hiding. He taught her to read, really read, beyond the basic skills she had picked up before her mother died. He taught her mathematics, history, science. He taught her that not all adults were dangerous, that some promises were actually kept, that trust could be earned and deserved. Bear, for his part, slowly warmed to Daniel as well. The growls turned to cautious sniffs, then to tentative tail wags, and finally to enthusiastic greetings whenever Daniel walked through the door. The dog seemed to understand that this man was not a threat, that he was, against all odds, exactly what Lily needed. One evening, as the three of them sat on the newly repaired porch watching the sunset, Lily asked a question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. "Daniel, why were you so sad when you first came here?" He looked at her, surprised by her perception. "What makes you think I was sad?" "Your eyes?" Lily shrugged. "They looked like my eyes did after Mama died. Empty, like you were here but not really here." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, for the first time since Sarah's death, he talked about her. He told Lily about the brilliant, beautiful woman who had loved old farmhouses and wildflowers and starry nights. He told her about their dreams, their plans, their 5 years of perfect happiness. And he told her about the phone call that destroyed everything, the drunk driver, the icy road, the hospital room where he held Sarah's hand as she took her last breath. "After she died," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion, "I didn't know what to do, so I worked. I built my company bigger and bigger, hoping that success would fill the hole she left behind. But it never did. Nothing ever did." He turned to look at Lily. "Until I came here. Until I found you." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she slipped her small hand into his. "Maybe," she said softly, "that's why you bought this house. Not to fix the building, but to fix yourself." Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. "Maybe you're right." "Sarah sounds nice," Lily added. "I think she would have liked me." "I think she would have loved you." Bear laid his head in Daniel's lap, and the three of them sat together as the stars emerged one by one, each of them carrying wounds from the past, but just beginning, to believe that healing was possible. As the farmhouse transformation neared completion, Daniel knew he couldn't avoid reality forever. He had responsibilities in New York, a company, employees, investors who depended on him. He couldn't simply disappear into rural Pennsylvania permanently, no matter how much he wanted to. But he also couldn't leave Lily. The solution came to him gradually, piece by piece, until it formed a complete picture in his mind. It was radical, unconventional, and would require navigating a complicated legal system. But Daniel Mitchell had built a billion-dollar company from nothing. He knew how to solve difficult problems. He was going to adopt Lily. The process was, as expected, challenging. Child Protective Services had to be notified. Investigations had to be conducted. Home studies, background checks, interviews. The bureaucracy was endless. Some officials questioned why a wealthy single businessman would want to adopt a traumatized orphan. Others wondered if his motives were truly pure. But Daniel persisted. He hired the best family lawyers in the country. He opened every aspect of his life to scrutiny. He proved, time and time again, that his intentions were genuine and his home was safe. The most difficult part was Lily herself. When Daniel first mentioned the word adoption, she had panicked. In her experience, adults who wanted to take responsibility for her always had ulterior motives. Foster families meant rules, restrictions, and people who pretended to care but didn't really. "I don't need a father," she said, her walls immediately going back up. "I've been fine on my own." "I know you have," Daniel agreed. "You're the strongest, most resourceful person I've ever met. You don't need anyone to survive." He paused. "But maybe. Maybe you deserve more than just survival. Maybe you deserve a home, a real one, with someone who cares about you, not because they have to, but because they want to." Lily was silent for a long time. Then she asked the question that mattered most to her. "What about Bear?" "Bear is family," Daniel said firmly. "If you're my daughter, then Bear is my son. We're a package deal, all three of us, no exceptions." It took several more conversations, many tears, and one memorable incident where Lily tried to run away in the middle of the night before her fear got the better of her. Daniel found her sitting by the old well pump, Bear curled at her feet, crying under the stars. "I'm scared," she admitted, when he sat down beside her. "Everyone I've ever loved has left me, my mom, my dad. What if you leave too?" Daniel put his arm around her small shoulders. "I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen," he said honestly. "Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise you this, I will never voluntarily leave you. I will never abandon you. For as long as I live, you will have a home. You will have someone in your corner. You will have someone who loves you, not because of what you can do for them, but because of who you are." Lily leaned into him, her tears soaking into his shirt. "Do you really mean that?" "I mean it more than I've ever meant anything." That night something changed. The walls Lily had built around her heart, walls that had protected her through years of abandonment and betrayal, began to crumble. She was still cautious, still watchful, but for the first time since her mother died, she allowed herself to hope. The adoption was finalized on a bright December morning, 6 months after Daniel first walked into that abandoned farmhouse and found a scared little girl hiding in the darkness. The courtroom was small but filled with warmth. Patricia had flown in from New York, along with several members of Daniel's staff who had grown fond of hearing stories about his new life. The local contractors who had helped rebuild the farmhouse were there too, along with neighbors from the surrounding farms who had welcomed Daniel and Lily into their community. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and silver hair, looked down at the unusual family before her. A billionaire CEO, a homeless orphan, a rescue dog sitting obediently at his owner's feet. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, "in all my years on the bench, I've never seen an adoption quite like this one. Your circumstances are unconventional, to say the least." Daniel nodded, his hand resting protectively on Lily's shoulder. "Yes, Your Honor, I suppose they are." "But," the judge continued, a smile softening her stern expression, "I have also rarely seen a bond as genuine as the one between you and this child. You have demonstrated patience, commitment, and love in ways that many biological parents never manage." She turned her gaze to Lily. "And you, young lady, you are remarkably brave. You survived things that would have broken most adults. It takes courage to trust again after everything you've been through." Lily straightened her shoulders. "Thank you, ma'am." The judge picked up her pen. It is the ruling of this court that the adoption of Lily Marie Hayes by Daniel Thomas Mitchell is hereby approved. From this day forward, she will be known as Lily Marie Mitchell. She signed the document with a flourish. Congratulations. You are officially a family. The courtroom erupted in applause. Patricia was crying. The contractors were cheering. Bear, sensing the excitement, let out a happy bark. But Daniel wasn't paying attention to any of them. He was looking at Lily, his daughter, and seeing something he had never expected to see again, a future worth living for. The months that followed were filled with adjustment and growth. Daniel didn't fully abandon his company. He was still the CEO, still made important decisions, still attended critical meetings. But he restructured his entire life to prioritize his new family. He bought an apartment in New York large enough for all of them, including a private terrace where Bear could play. He enrolled Lily in one of the city's best private schools, where she quickly caught up on the education she had missed. He learned to cook, badly at first, but with increasing competence, because Lily deserved home-cooked meals made with love. The transition wasn't always smooth. Lily had nightmares that woke her screaming in the middle of the night, dreams of abandonment and darkness that took years to fully fade. She struggled to make friends at school, unsure how to relate to children who had never known hunger or fear or sleeping in abandoned buildings. She tested Daniel constantly, pushing boundaries to see if he would give up on her like everyone else had. He never did. Every tantrum, every setback, every moment of regression, Daniel met with patience and understanding. He understood that trauma doesn't heal overnight. He understood that trust, once broken, takes years to rebuild. And he understood that loving someone means staying, even when staying is hard. Slowly, beautifully, Lily began to flourish. Her grades improved. She made friends. She joined the school's art club and discovered a talent for painting that reminded Daniel painfully of Sarah, who had loved to paint sunsets and wildflowers. She started calling Daniel Dad, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, then as naturally as breathing. Bear, meanwhile, became something of a celebrity in their Manhattan building. The doormen adored him. The other residents stopped to pet him. He transformed from a starving stray into a healthy, happy dog who slept on a velvet bed and ate gourmet dog food. Daniel kept the farmhouse in Pennsylvania. They spent holidays there, summers there, any weekend they could manage. It became their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the noise of the city and remember where their family began. But the story doesn't end there. Because the past, as Patricia once warned, has a way of catching up. It happened on a warm spring evening, nearly 2 years after the adoption. Daniel and Lily were at the farmhouse for Easter weekend, preparing for an egg hunt in the yard. Bear was chasing butterflies by the old barn. The trees were blooming. Everything seemed perfect. Then a car pulled up the driveway. It was an old sedan, rusted and dented, belching smoke from its exhaust pipe. Daniel watched it approach with growing unease. They rarely had unexpected visitors out here. The car stopped, and a man got out. He was thin, haggard, with the kind of weathered face that comes from years of hard living. His clothes were worn. His hands trembled slightly. But Lily recognized him immediately. "Daddy?" she whispered, the word carrying years of pain. It was Thomas Hayes, her biological father, the man who had abandoned her at a gas station and disappeared without a trace. Daniel moved instinctively, positioning himself between Lily and the approaching man. Bear stopped chasing butterflies and ran to Lily's side, hackles raised. "That's far enough," Daniel said, his voice cold with controlled anger. Thomas held up his hands. "I'm not here for trouble. I needed to see her. I needed to explain. You don't have any rights here. You abandoned her. You lost her." "I know," Thomas's voice cracked. "I know what I did. There's no excuse for it. I was in a dark place. The drinking, the grief. I convinced myself she'd be better off without me, that someone would find her and take care of her." His eyes, red-rimmed and wet, found Lily behind Daniel's protective stance. "I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry for what I did to you." Lily stared at him, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, fear, anger, grief. And underneath it all the eternal hope of a child who still, despite everything, wanted to believe her father loved her. "Why did you come back?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I got sober." Thomas took a shaky breath. 8 months now. I've been working the program, seeing a therapist, trying to become someone who deserves to look you in the eye again. When I finally felt ready, I tried to find you. It took months. The trail was cold. The records were sealed. But eventually I found out you'd been adopted. I found out about, he gestured at Daniel, about him, about this place. "So what do you want?" Daniel demanded. "You think you can just show up and play father after everything you've done?" "No." Thomas shook his head. "I know I lost that right. I'm not here to take her back or fight for custody or any of that. His voice broke. "I just needed her to know that I'm sorry, that I think about her every day, that giving her up is the biggest regret of my life." The silence stretched on, heavy with years of abandonment and its consequences. Finally, Lily stepped out from behind Daniel. Her hand found his, squeezed tight, anchoring herself. "You left me," she said to Thomas. "You told me you were going to buy food, and you never came back. I waited for 3 days. I thought you were dead. I thought something terrible had happened. And then I realized the truth was worse. You just didn't want me anymore." Tears streamed down Thomas's face. "Lily, But I survived." Lily's voice grew stronger. "I found Bear. I found this house. And I found my dad." She looked up at Daniel with eyes full of love. "My real dad, the one who chose me, the one who never left." Thomas flinched as if struck, but he nodded, accepting the blow. "He seems like a good man." "He's the best man." Lily turned back to her biological father. "I don't hate you. Hating you would mean you still had power over me, and you don't. Not anymore. But I don't need you either. I have a family now, a real one. She took a deep breath, seeming to make a decision. "You can write to me if you want, letters, not visits, and maybe someday, if you really have changed, we can talk. But that's all I can offer right now. That's all I have to give." Thomas wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "That's more than I deserve." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a folded photograph, creased and worn from years of handling. He held it out to Lily. "This is your mother," he said, "before she got sick. I've carried it with me every day since she died. I want you to have it." Lily hesitated, then took the photograph. It showed a young woman with her blonde hair and gray eyes, laughing at something off camera, beautiful, full of life, gone too soon. "She would be so proud of you," Thomas said, "so proud of the person you've become." Then he turned and walked back to his car. He got in, started the engine, and drove away down the dirt road. He didn't look back. Daniel wrapped his arm around Lily's shoulders as they watched the car disappear. "Are you okay?" She leaned into him, still clutching the photograph. "I think so. I needed that. I needed to see him, to say what I said. I've been carrying that anger for so long. It feels lighter now. I'm proud of you. That took incredible courage." Lily looked up at him, a small smile breaking through her tears. "I learned from the best." They stood together in the spring sunshine, father and daughter, watching the last of the dust settle on the driveway. Bear pressed against Lily's legs, offering his silent support. And in that moment, Daniel realized something important. He had bought this farmhouse hoping to restore it, hoping that the work would somehow fill the emptiness in his heart. But the building was never what needed fixing. The healing came from something he could never have planned, a scared little girl and her loyal dog, hiding in the ruins, waiting to be found. 5 years later, Lily Mitchell stood at the podium of her high school auditorium, addressing the graduating class as valedictorian. She was 16 now, confident and strong, with her mother's gray eyes and her adoptive father's determination. When I was 9 years old, she began, I was homeless. I lived in an abandoned farmhouse with nothing but my dog and my fear. I had given up on adults, given up on hope, given up on the idea that life could ever be anything but survival. She paused, looking out at the audience. Daniel sat in the front row, tears already streaming down his face. Beside him, Bear, old now but still loyal, dozed peacefully. But then something changed. Someone found me. Someone who didn't have to care, didn't have to stay, didn't have to love me, but chose to do all three. He taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up day after day, even when it's hard. It's about seeing someone at their worst and loving them anyway. Lily smiled, her eyes finding Daniel's in the crowd. Dad, you saved my life, but more than that, you gave me a life worth living. Everything I am, everything I've achieved is because you looked at a scared little girl in an abandoned farmhouse and saw someone worth fighting for. She turned back to her classmates. My message to all of you is simple. Never underestimate the power of kindness. One act of compassion can change the entire trajectory of a life. One person who refuses to give up can be the difference between despair and hope. So, be that person. Be the one who stays. Be the one who helps. Be the one who cares. The auditorium erupted in applause. Daniel rose to his feet, clapping until his palms hurt, pride swelling in his chest until he thought it might burst. After the ceremony, Lily found him in the crowd. She threw her arms around him, graduation cap askew, laughing and crying at the same time. Did I do okay? She asked. Daniel held her tight, remembering the terrified child who once couldn't trust anyone, who once believed that everyone she loved would leave. You did more than okay, he said. You did exactly what I always knew you would. You became someone extraordinary. Bear barked in agreement, tail wagging despite his old age. And as the three of them walked out of the auditorium together, Daniel looked up at the sky, bright blue, dotted with perfect white clouds, and whispered a silent thank you to Sarah. Thank you for leading me to that farmhouse. Thank you for giving me another chance at love. Thank you for watching over us from wherever you are. He had gone there to rebuild an old house. Instead, he found a family. And that, in the end, made all the difference. The farmhouse still stands today, fully restored to its former glory. White paint gleams in the sunlight. The porch no longer sags. Flowers bloom in the garden where Lily once foraged for survival. Every holiday season, Daniel and Lily return there. They invite friends, neighbors, anyone who needs a place to belong. They cook enormous meals, tell stories around the fireplace, and watch the snow fall gently over the Pennsylvania hills. On the mantel, 3 photographs sit in a row. The first shows Sarah and Daniel on their honeymoon, young and full of dreams. The second shows Lily's mother, laughing in the sunshine, forever frozen at her happiest moment. The third shows Daniel, Lily, and Bear on Adoption Day. A new family, forged not by blood but by choice, standing on the courthouse steps with matching smiles. Different lives, different losses, different paths, but all of them led here, to this place, to this family, to this love that proves stronger than any tragedy. Because sometimes the things that seem most broken, the abandoned farmhouses, the discarded children, the grieving hearts, are actually just waiting to be found, waiting for someone brave enough to see their potential, waiting for someone kind enough to offer a second chance. And when that happens, when the lost are finally found, the healing can truly begin. It doesn't matter how you became a family. What matters is that you are one. What matters is that you show up, that you stay, that you love. What matters is that you never give up on the people who need you most. That is the lesson of the farmhouse. That is the gift that a scared little girl and her loyal dog gave to a broken billionaire who thought he had nothing left to live for. Hope, home, family. Not the kind you're born into, the kind you build, one brave choice at a time. And so, If you ever find yourself driving through rural Pennsylvania and you happen to pass an old farmhouse with fresh white paint and flowers in the garden, slow down. Take a moment to appreciate what you're seeing, because that house is not just a building. It's a monument to second chances, a testament to the transformative power of love, a reminder that every person, no matter how lost, deserves someone who will fight for them. Every child deserves a champion. Every heart deserves to heal. And every house, no matter how abandoned, has the potential to become a home. All it takes is someone willing to open the door. The strongest families are the ones we choose. The deepest love is the love that persists through the hardest times. And the greatest gift we can give another person is simply this: I see you. I choose you. I will never let you go. Remember that the next time you encounter someone in need. You might just be standing at the beginning of the most important story of your life and theirs.